think Celine is, right?
Okay, we're starting now. Okay.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Okay, cool. Hi, everyone. My name is Mandano. I'm a second year nutrition major. I go to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And I was a part of local leaders in high school, probably like my junior and senior year. And I was a part of the public policy group. And I was also, like the graphics and media person. I forget the exact title, but yeah.
Yeah. Anisha, you're to the right of her.
Hi, everyone. My name is Anisha. I graduated from Amador back in 2013, so before this club was even formed. I wish we had that club back then. I graduated from Washington State University with a biology degree and a minor in psychology. And right now I'm at Emory University doing my grad studies for Masters of Public Health.
Meg?
Hi, I'm Meg. I graduated from Amador in 2018, and I was only a part of Local Leaders my senior year. But then I was a part of the internship the last 3 years. I'm in my third year at Cal Poly. I'm a biology major with a focus in marine sciences, and I have a minor in statistics.
And Bryan.
Hi, I'm Bryan, and I graduated from Amador in 2019. And I was part of Local Leaders since the second half of my sophomore year. And yeah, I was in charge of, I think, the volunteering group my senior year and on-campus projects for junior year. And right now, I'm a second year computer science major with a minor in math at UCLA.
Yeah, and we have a fifth panelist as well. She's going to be a little bit, I think Amy said 10 minutes late-ish. Her name is Varsha Madapoosi. She was the president 2 years ago for the Amador Local Leaders, and she has a lot of good things to say too. So I'll let her introduce herself when she actually gets here. But yeah, we can get started as soon as possible. Before that though, I'm just gonna mention what's gonna go down a little bit. And it's honestly pretty casual. Basically what's gonna happen is, I mean, as you can see here, this is like not, if you've been on a Zoom webinar, it's like a different setup. It's like all the participants are like not, you don't see them, they're like non-existent. And personally, I hate that. So like, this is a lot better setup to me. You guys can actually see an audience, and we want you guys to be able to interact with these alumni, these people who are, you know, up in college and doing great things. So you guys can actually ask your questions verbally if you want to, or also use the chat. And yeah, so basically what's gonna happen is Cassie and I are going to be asking this. We have like a main list of like central questions we're going to be asking our panelists today. And while that's all happening, you guys, like between their casual conversations, between our remarks, you guys can like add interjections, add questions if you have any out loud. You can just unmute yourself. And also if you want to, you can put your questions in the chat, and the other officers will be looking and like monitoring the chat, and they can also chime in the middle of our conversation if you prefer to do it that way. So basically what I'm saying is, if you ever have anything you want to say, any follow-up questions, you're curious about anything you want to hear about this one alumni's experience, just chime in, say anything. We want you guys to interact as much as possible. So yeah, any questions for Gutos? And yes, it is 90 minutes, as Cassie said. And there's going to be a break in the middle. I can't remember exactly what time. Cassie, do you know what time?
Yeah, it'll be around 3:50 to 3:55. So that's a little bathroom break or whatever you need to do.
Yeah. And after that, we'll just keep it rolling. And I'm going to forget that. So Cassie or someone remind me. I'm going to like keep going.
Because I never go overtime.
Right. Someone remind us. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Cassie, do you want to start with the first question?
Yeah, sure. Okay. So our very first question is, how did you begin your journey in environmentalism?
I can start. So I guess mine is kind of like a little complicated, but I started getting really into nutrition when I was in 8th grade. I watched a documentary and it totally like changed my outlook on nutrition and health. And so just after that point, I started like researching a lot more. about sustainability and like animal agriculture and how to live live and be as sustainable as possible. And so I guess that was like a turning point for me. And it wasn't until like my junior year of high school when I took AP Environmental Science that I really started to like love the sustainability aspect and the environmental advocacy and that aspect, and especially doing or being a part of local leaders. That was really really inspired me to get more into public policy and like really take action. So yeah, that was pretty much like that like led me to be very interested in sustainability and environmental science and stuff. But I think going to college, I was kind of like torn between two different studies, environmental studies and nutrition. And so for me, I think now I'm at a point where I'm like able to kind of like intertwine a lot of them. Yeah, so that's like a brief summary. But
I can answer next. So, like I said, I am a biology major, and so I really am coming at the environmentalism perspective, looking at it from a sense of biodiversity and how much biodiversity we've lost, especially in the last few years. Bio classes are pretty depressing in the 21st century, if I'm being honest, and so it's just really inspired me to try to do my part in my personal life as well as in my academic life to try to slow climate change and try to like spread awareness about this issue.
I guess I'll go next. So my story is a little bit different than I would say Lauren's and Meg's story. So I was always interested in like environmentalism, but mostly with animals, like when I was growing up. But later on through time, I got interested in like health aspects as well. And so the environment really affects people's health. And so because of Go Green Initiative, which I've been an intern for 2 summers, I actually learned a lot about like how certain processes work. And so that's how I figured out how I wanted to do my master's in public health. I did my biology degree, however, for physical therapy, because I was thinking about doing physical therapy at that point. But as Meg said, biology classes are kind of depressing in the 21st century just because it's makes you really aware of like everything else that's going on that you might not hear about.
And I'll go next. I think I'm the last one. So I kind of started like when I was really young. My parents immigrated from China, so they have this mindset where like you have to preserve the environment as good as you can, like don't waste food, don't waste water and that kind of stuff. So that kind of was in my childhood. But then as I grew older, it kind of changed into seeing more about public health. I became really interested in that aspect of the environment because I think there are many different aspects of the environment and they're all really important. But I kind of saw how like, you know, the news agencies, or I don't know if the news agencies, but researchers at different colleges were able to pinpoint where Ebola started from with different models and that kind of stuff, which I thought was really cool. And then in high school, I joined Local Leaders and I kind of got a lot of new perspectives from people who, like Lauren, is really interested in nutrition. And I kind of got a lot of different perspectives on different people who are interested in different aspects of the environment.
And Bryan basically said what I was gonna like segue with, but like, I mean, we're all here because we care about the environment. But as you can see from our 4 panelists, it's pretty diverse already. You have these people, they're doing different things, but they all pertain to the environment in some shape or form. And that's kind of what the whole theme of today's panel is. Like, regardless of where you're going to go in your future, there's always a way to implement this. There's always a way to make sure conservation, sustainability is like at the forefront of your mind, or at least a part of it. So yeah, thank you guys for that. I'll ask the next question. So how did you discover, it's kind of similar, but how did you discover your passion for whatever major or field you're in specifically, or whatever career you're thinking about?
Yeah, so I guess for me, like I mentioned before a little bit, nutrition was kind of what got me into this realm of sustainability and especially like just health and stuff. But I think really with that, like a lot of like my passion for environmental change and, you know, advocacy was when I went on a service trip my like sophomore year of high school. I went to the Dominican Republic where we built these like buildings with using like plastic bottles. And so that was like the focus of the trip was called Building a Sustainable World. But there are seven different like factors that, you know, they were like going off of, so like health, economic, you know, environment. And so for me, just learning about the health, like many of the other panelists, like that was really what was interesting to me. And so like, I think now, because like nutrition is my major, it's really opened the lens and just, or like my perspective of sustainability and how diet is really important. And, you know, especially with agriculture, that's everything with nutrition and food. And so for me, that kind of like has kept me in the major and like kept me interested in nutrition, but also like doing extracurriculars and clubs that are more environmental focused have really been awesome for me in college.
I've always really liked science. I've loved going to like natural history museums when I was growing up. And when I was 12, my dad took me scuba diving and I absolutely despised it because none of my equipment fit me and I couldn't keep myself upright. I was upside down the entire time. And I refused to even go on the second dive of the day. But then 4 years later, I just decided to get my scuba diving license and loved it, still love it. But when you go scuba diving, you can really see how damaged the ecosystems are. It's pretty obvious. There are these organisms that are like these big purple fans, and they're kind of just rotting away. And they're like, it's really common to see those dying. And so it just became very important to me to see what I could do to help protect those ecosystems.
Wait, you said big purple fans? Oh, sorry, I didn't want to interrupt. I was just really curious. Oh, no. Like, what is that?
I'm pretty sure it's actually an animal. It's kind of like a coral. They're really big. They can get like huge, but they're only like that thick. So they're just like a huge, kind of like a piece of paper. And they're like a purple net. So there's holes in them. You can see through them. And that's when they're healthy though. But a lot of times when you see them today, they're kind of like rotting away and there's a lot of holes in them and stuff. And it's sad to see.
So I guess for me, like when I finished university, I figured out that physical therapy wasn't for me, but I really wanted to work on something towards health, especially with those who might not be as unfortunate or they might not even realize the issues that they have today, especially with now like climate change, etc. So as growing up, my parents took me all over the world. So I've seen like various different places as well as been to many different places that have a lot of different environmental changes. And so I think one of the most profound things for me was when we went to the Cayman Islands. I've been there twice. The first time we went there, it was before a major hurricane. And so I got to see like all this coral. It was really, really pretty. The second time I came, everything was dead. It was really, really, really sad. And I was very upset by that. So I guess that kind of was like a big impact on me in the sense that like, oh, okay, this is not good. Like this is like, even though health is not always considered directly with environmentalism, it does have like a big impact because there's water scarcity, etc. So there's like a lot of things going on.
Yeah, and then for me, I've kind of always been interested in analytical and technical things. I want to build things from scratch. And so that's kind of why I narrowed down my interest into engineering. And then I specifically chose computer science and math because obviously there's a lot of job security in that field. And like being born and raised in the Bay Area, that played a large influence. And also I feel that CS is unique because it's something where you can actually build things without like any prior experience, if that makes sense. Like if you go to university and you decide to take mechanical engineering or even like electrical engineering, you're not going to actually be taking those classes directly until your maybe sophomore or junior year. But for CS, you kind of start from the get-go because you don't need too much prior experience. So yeah, I guess the essence of why I made my decision is because this field is just so versatile and pretty much applicable to many different fields, and it's just a valuable skill to have in the 21st century.
Yeah. So I guess like the ongoing theme for the past two questions has been that versatility that Bryan was talking about. And I remember this last summer during the Go Green internship, we talked about people, prosperity, and planet at one point, like the three Ps. And that just like reminded me a lot of what Lauren, Meg, Anisha, and Ryan just said, because they're talking about the impacts of climate change on people, on prosperity, not so much because it's really linked to economics and it's not antithetical no matter what politicians say. And it's also obviously very linked to the planet, as like Meg's and Anisha's stories about how the destruction of nature is all around us all the time. And we just have to open our eyes to that. But yeah, that was really cool. Thanks for the responses to how you discovered your passions. Because I know for Colin and me, we are really not, we're really hazy on what we want to do in college at this point.
I'll just let you know, it's okay to be completely hazy on like what you want to do. It's just keep on trying and figure out what you like, what you don't like, and just work from there. Like there is no perfect story of how you get to blah, 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 wherever you're going in the future.
That's part of what I really love about this club. Like, of course, I care about more about environmental science and public health and stuff, but also if that's not where I end up going, it's like instilling values in me that I know I can carry to whatever I do, like good values. So, yeah.
Totally. Okay, so the next question. What is the most fascinating and memorable experience that you have had in any of your classes, projects, clubs, research, volunteering, field trips, and/or interviews? This one should be a fun one.
And anyone can start. Lauren, you don't have to be like number.
Yeah. I need to think a little.
Yeah, I can go. So, sorry, are you talking about in college, right? Not in high school?
Yeah, I mean, I guess college, because you do have the added experience of like having a college experience. But if there's anything in high school that had a really big impact on you, like go ahead and share that too.
Okay, yeah, I'll start with high school and then move on to college. So in high school, I'd say the most memorable field trip would be with local leaders to Sacramento, just because it was nice to be able to kind of like experience where all these important policy decisions regarding, not only the environment, but also like our education, like our education, the environment, the economy, all these different important decisions are being made in Sacramento. So it's just nice to be able to interact with some policymakers and just see them face to face and present to them. So that would be a very memorable field trip in high school. And then in college, I think you mentioned research, and some interesting research that I've been starting this year is with epidemiology, which is like public health. And we're really looking at how COVID is spreading because that's so relevant to our modern day. And, we've kind of been looking at how maybe colleges can look at dorm sewage and wastewater to test for COVID and how that can be used to help identify where COVID is and where it's not. So that can make testing more efficient. And looking at different models and how they're predicting COVID, which one's more efficient and why it's more efficient. For example, some models can actually predict the untested cases, which is pretty cool. And yeah.
I can go next. So I guess for me, I'm kind of thinking of like a project in college. So I just recently got a grant through the Cal Poly Green Fund to do a year-long project on campus. And what the project is basically to make Cal Poly a pollinator-friendly campus and like pollinator-certified campus through like an organization called Bee City USA. And so that's like a current project that I'm doing. It's really inspiring and really engaging. And it's, for me at least, because I'm a second year, like last year, I kind of like, I guess after coming out of high school where I was like super involved in like so many different things, I was like, okay, I kind of just want to like chill just for like my first quarter and just like and get myself involved in clubs, but also like I'm in college, And so I think it wasn't until my winter quarter that I started to get more involved in clubs and organizations. And now coming into my second year, I'm pretty involved. And but I think I still like using this project was like a way for me to get like even more involved in campus. And so for me, that's just like been a really cool thing that I've been a part of recently. But I think also like on the academic side, there's just so many classes that are interesting. And like for me, I like in high school, I hated chemistry. I hated chemistry. I was like, I did not realize that nutrition required so much chemistry. And then I was like, wait, I have to take the whole chem series. Like, what is this? And so even though like those classes were like challenging, they were like pretty interesting. But like, I wouldn't take them again, but they were interesting. And so like, just for me, like that was another like exciting thing to do and like challenging because like, obviously I wasn't like, I didn't want to do it, but it just kind of forced me to, and it kind of like opened my perspective, like academically, as far as like what I can do and what may be interesting. So.
I find it so funny that you hated that series so much because I tutor for that series and I love it so much.
Oh, that's fun. That is funny.
Yeah. For my answer to the question, I think the coolest thing that I've ever gotten to do was right before COVID, actually, I was in a marine ecology course and we got to go on a field trip to the Monterey Bay Aquarium, and we got this whole tour, and it was like we got to go behind the scenes, and so we got to see how the jellyfish are like spawned and raised, which was super cool. And we also got to go to the back of that like deep blue exhibit where they have all the big animals. I got to stand on the top, and apparently that's how the animals get fed. So they all thought that we were gonna feed them, and they all like came up, and this turtle like splashed my foot with water, and it was so amazing. But that was just one day. I'm currently working on a project that's like outreach to elementary schoolers. And so we're trying to teach elementary schoolers about the ocean and specifically like California coastlines, which is super cool.
I guess my favorite like experience, I would probably say would be definitely right in university when we had to work with students from various different countries around the world pretty much. And we had to come up with a presentation about like how, I believe the presentation was about like how the water is being polluted in a very specific river in India with lead poisoning. And so it was actually really interesting because I did not know that actually existed in that area. And it was also really just unique seeing different perspectives from people all over the world because everybody had like a different way of going about it. So I guess in that sense, it also taught me that there are more than like just a few ways to do something. There's a lot of other ways, and you have to listen to a lot of other people. I guess my second favorite thing would honestly be the Monterey Bay Aquarium. When I was in elementary school, we actually got to do the behind the tour scene. Not as advanced as yours because we were only in elementary school, but it was still like super cool.
Wow, it was like perfect timing because Varsha just arrived. Hi, Varsha. Feel free to introduce yourself. And we already kind of covered all the other panelists, like their major right now and like what inspired them to start their journey through this whole environmental shebang. So go ahead.
Awesome. My name is Varsha. I use a tree series. I'm a sophomore at Berkeley, and I'm studying data science and society and environment. And I'm really focused on environmental justice and research into that, specifically in like the global waste trade. And I think how I kind of got started in the environmental world was definitely through local leaders. It was kind of my first look into the whole system as a whole. I think I joined mainly because I was really interested in like the planet side of it, helping to save the planet and kind of that aspect. I think as I've kind of done my first year in college, I'm really interested in environmentalism for the people side of it now. So I'm really focused on how the waste or just how like environmentalism as a whole affects people in different communities, focus on environmental justice. So I think that's kind of my journey from like focusing on the environment from like the planet to now like the people and making sure that communities across the world are emphasized differently in different ways.
And if you guys don't know, Varsha is actually the president of the local leaders when I and Cassidy and Darian and a bunch of us first joined. So kudos to her for like the reason why we probably stayed. And
Yeah, the team was Lauren, Brian, Varsha, and then Paulina and Justin.
Yeah.
Okay, it was a dream team. It was great.
Correct. Okay. Where was I? Yeah, we can hop on to the next question if I can just find it.
I can cover this one, Colin, and you can do the next one.
Thank you. I don't know why it's not
Okay.
loading.
So the next question is, what do you think the future would look like in your field of study?
I guess I'll just hop in and start first. So since I'm going into public health, there's a lot of policies that are being written for the environment, but also right now because of COVID right now is taking a very big precedent on a lot of stuff. So in the sense that I think my work will be more related to probably COVID in the environment and how to like stop the spread of it in a sense, aside from like people not wearing masks, but like just things that you can do like naturally with like water resources, because a lot of times COVID could be easily transmitted through water, as they found out through some buildings where some people got it when they shouldn't have gotten it. So
So I am planning on getting my PhD and becoming a professor. I've actually been working on kind of deciding where I'm going. So because I'm going to be so focused on education, a big aspect of sustainability in my life, I think, is just going to be talking to people and trying to help like the next generation, I guess, after myself, try to see like how they can help sustainability and everything and how it relates to biology.
Yeah, I guess for me, you know, as a nutrition major, like there's so many different issues that like I've like learned about ever since like just starting this like my major. And so I think looking towards the future, I think like access is definitely a big topic, and like food deserts and how, you know, people have access to food and how to improve that. I think that mixed with health, like many other fields, like I think that's kind of where the future is going, as well as really preventative approaches to medicine and really looking at before we give medication, like what's the root of the problem. And so I think nutrition is really, the field is kind of going in that approach and just really trying to emphasize that, you know, diet influences, you know, chronic conditions and other factors later in your life.
I feel like the tech industry, which is a lot of what CS is about, it's definitely automating a lot of the jobs. So that's part of where the future is going. But a lot of it also is just using it in different fields. So for example, I know that I think they're using a lot of different algorithms right now on Wall Street to do fintech, or I know public health researchers, biology researchers are using different algorithms to, you know, analyze DNA or analyze different data trends. So that's a lot of what the tech industry is going into. And I think a lot of this also in the future, we're going to have to address this inequality in access to STEM education, because I know that throughout this entire country, in California, the United States, there's a very large STEM gap between, you know, the wealthy and the poor. And yeah, and actually I joined an organization that's trying to help address this called Teach LA, where we work with underrepresented students in STEM to try to get them more access to STEM, especially computer science education.
I think for me, like environmental justice is like a field that is growing, but definitely not as like big as a lot of the other things, or a lot of the efforts are more grassroots community organization based, which is like kind of how it's supposed to be. But I think it's definitely hard to like seek out opportunities in that lens. But where I see kind of myself fit into the role is I am really focused on the data end of it. So being able to provide a quantitative measure to a lot of environmental justice indicators, and hopefully being able to see EJ through a both quantitative lens, but also the really, really important like qualitative lens of talking to these people one-on-one, having these interviews with them. So I'm really focused on trying to do both of that. I think it's really important to have both aspects of it. So I don't know, the field is kind of all over the place, but I'm really interested in exploring and expanding it.
I guess I'll just add a little bit more to what I said, is that like health policy right now, they're aiming more towards COVID, but that's because that's the big thing right now, and that's where they're getting the funding from. But there is a lot in health policy that's towards like education, towards nutrition, towards STDs, you name it, environmental stuff, like you name it, it's everywhere. So like specifically what I want to deal with more, I think more has to do with different inequities within society. And a lot of that does have to do like where you live, which is also affected by the environment itself.
That's really what drew me to public health, honestly. And Anisha, you're going into public health, so that makes sense. Like, there's the environmental aspect, there's the social aspect, there's even like political aspects, math aspects, STEM aspects. So there's a lot to do. And you guys kind of already touched a lot on like the next question, which is how do you see yourselves utilizing environmental consciousness after college, like career-wise or lifestyle-wise? So you guys can touch on that some more. Or also, I guess, in tandem, like how would you give advice to other people to be environmentally conscious, aside from like a major?
I guess what I would say for like anybody who really wants to know more about environment, pay attention to what's in your area. Don't try to always look at the broad aspect, but sometimes look and see what you have in your local area, because sometimes, such as like Pleasanton with water, a lot of people don't really know where we get our water from, but it makes such a big difference once you realize what all the different processes, where it comes from, what you can do to help it, what you can do to sustain it, and who you actually need to talk to. Because no matter what, you're not going to be 100% an expert on a subject, so don't act like you know everything, but basically go and look out for that information. If you don't know something, go and look for it. If you can't find it somewhere, find an expert who knows about it. That's all I can pretty much say, because that's like the best way to be an environmentalist.
Kind of bouncing off what Anisha said. So like when you're voting, like once you get into college and after college, you're going to be of voting age. So when you're voting, be sure to actually read through the different politicians' ideas and stances. Don't just like take their word for it based on what they say in their speech. So actually put in your own research and make your own judgments based on what you think matches your values the most. And that, I think, is one of the best ways to be environmentally conscious, because these politicians are going to be what directly affects the policy that affects you and your future generations.
Yeah, totally. I agree with you, Brian. For me, I think kind of like touching on like future lifestyle and just like current lifestyle. For me, like I got really interested in zero waste in high school, and I think not like my perspective of it is completely different, I think, from what it is in college, because just, you know, I'm not, you know, like I'm buying everything my own, and like it's not like I'm just at home and like my parents can get it, and like, you know, it's definitely since coming to college it's been really different, especially last year when I was like eating at the dining hall and like everything came in plastic, and I was like, what is going on? Like I don't want to use this. And so just kind of like doing what I can, like, and even like with my diet, like it was really hard to be vegan last year and just like manage that. And so like you just kind of adapt. And for me, I just, you know, I went to the store, you know, once a week last year and kept it like a lot of snacks in my mini fridge, you know, like in my dorm. So I think it's really important to adapt. But also I think what Anisha said with like buying or like focus like locally in a sense, because like one thing that I've been doing since like moving back to college is like every Saturday I go to the farmer's market. I buy my produce for the week, and then like I make that last through the week. And so just kind of like buying small and like just what I need, it really has helped reduce food waste. Because let me tell you, like when I was back home, I hate to admit it, but I wasted so much food, and I was like, oh, I'm just like composting it, but like still like it's uneaten food that, you know, like that was energy and resources. So I think that's really important, and just like keeping yourself like aware and active, and doing the best you can. Because like I think in high school I was kind of like in this like bubble kind of that like everyone can do it, but I think like coming to college it completely like changed that perspective, and but in a good way. Like it's important to adapt and change. So yeah.
If I can just say something to that, like right now, living at home with someone who generally takes care of like the grocery shopping, parents grocery shopping and like making dinner and stuff, like I like don't have as much control of what I'm eating. And then like if she wants to make pork tonight, I eat the pork. And I tell myself, oh, when I go to college, it's like, right, it's so idealized. I'm realizing that like when I go to college, I'm gonna be like go vegetarian. I'm gonna like become a vegan. It's gonna be great, and I can just do it all myself. Like hearing this, like it's gonna take a lot of work, and there's gonna be like bumps and stuff. But I guess it's something that I and everyone needs to realize and just like take it step by step and like just do your best.
Exactly. And you just have to realize, that you just have to do the best you can. And I can totally like relate to the sense that like when you're in high school, your parent, like a lot of parents do cooking, but like, and every family's different. So yeah.
I think it's also really important to focus on giving credit where credit is due. Because I know I've personally been trying to be vegan, but I definitely have not been super successful, but I've been like mildly successful. Like I eat dairy a few times a week, but I try to remind myself like the fact that I can count every single time that I've eaten dairy this week like is such a big win over just eating dairy for every single meal. And sometimes it's really hard for me to remember that, not just for myself, but also for others. I feel like I got into that really toxic mindset of environmentalism where like kind of blaming people for not doing enough. And that's never going to be a good way to inspire others to try to be better when they get excited that they started using a reusable water bottle and you're like, oh, but you got a plastic coffee cup at Starbucks this morning. Because it's like, well, then they're not going to celebrate the fact that they stop using plastic water bottles. And I think that's been a lesson that I've been trying to like hammer into my own head recently. And I think that is a very important thing to keep in mind. Not just for environmentalism, but for everything too in life.
I would say I totally resonate with that. I think there's this huge like divide almost, I would say. Like we all know that like only 100 companies are responsible for like 70% of our greenhouse gas emissions, yet so many individuals feels like it's on us to make all these changes. Like, oh, me buying a water bottle is going to change the whole world, but we know that it's not. So I think I've personally been really struggling with like, why am I sacrificing so much of my like lifestyle, my comfort to live a sustainable lifestyle? But I think to me, I think that's totally valid. Like if you're thinking like that, totally makes sense. Like, yourself and your barriers best. But to me, how I view it as is I will take my conscious lifestyle into wherever I go in the future. So if I work at a job and they're this giant corporation, I can hopefully make a difference there and bring my conscious lifestyle into that organization and hopefully make a difference on a larger scale. So I think to me, individual action may not have a huge impact like on a global scale, but I think where you end up using the individual action and that mindset you carry is really more important than anything.
Oh, did everyone answer? I like lost track.
Yeah,
Very cool. Go ahead, Cassie.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say the whole thing that Meg and Varsha just went through, like I totally get that. Like all the time when I talk to my family or friends or anyone, I always know people like they would always go up to me and go like, "Hey Cassie, I brought a reusable water bottle today. Like, aren't you so happy?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, but," and then like inside I'm always like, "But," and then I see them, like everyone, if you're in Pleasant, everyone went to Amador or like Pleasanton Bay Area or General, right? So like everyone drinks boba all the time or like Starbucks, and there's just so much plastic accumulating all over like the lunch tables. Honestly, the ground, it's humiliating how Amador is like that. And so then I would get that into my head, but then you have to like start thinking that what I'm ready for is not necessarily what like someone else is ready for. So like Meg, I also struggle with like trying to go vegetarian. Like I don't eat meat, but I do eat fish. And it's like this whole like tug of war. But it's just to know, I guess, to be patient with yourself. Yeah. Okay, and the next question. What's the biggest difference? This is probably the last one before our break. Oh yes, Lauren's my inspiration. Mrs. Buck always said Lauren being like the really diligent vegan who wasn't like in your face about it really does make a difference. She's just like
That's
so
nice. Thanks, guys.
Wait, is this like universal? I think you're also like what first kickstarted. That's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
Congratulations.
Wow.
Okay. So what's the difference, biggest difference between your experience in high school and in college?
Oh, that's like a tough question because there's just so much that happens between high school and college. But I think the one thing that definitely made the biggest difference is I got to choose what classes to some degree of what I wanted to do. So I wasn't required to go and take the Spanish class if I already took my 3 years of Spanish or 2 years or whatever amount of Spanish that you're required to take for college. And so being able to kind of also choose some of my elective courses really helped me because I got to figure out, oh, I like this idea, but I don't like this idea, or maybe I can do something with this rather than being like, well, okay, I'm stuck doing this course because I have like absolutely no choice. Like I took a capstone course having to do with plants and people and like how plants affect people's health and what you can do with plants. Like I did not know that you could make, at that point, I did not know you could make clothing out of bamboo. So I thought that was kind of cool. And so like it was just a class that I chose to take. Like I had to choose a capstone class, but I just chose that class because I was like, this seems interesting. What can I do with this? So it's like I was able to explore, I guess, more outside of the high school bubble where you're required to take certain classes in specific orders. So I got to like explore like what I was interested in more than what like they required me to do.
I think the biggest difference for me is the creation of this little bubble of like-minded people. Like I am a bio major and a lot of my friends are bio majors, and if they're not bio majors, then they are some sort of environmental major. And that's super cool because I learned so much from them. But I also think it's kind of detrimental because it gets me in this mindset where like everyone thinks like me, but no, I just have surrounded myself with people who think like me. One of my friends was a bio major and he switched to English, which is so different, but it's really nice because at least I have one friend that he looks at life very differently than I do. And I think that that's a really important thing. And in high school, you have classes with everyone. And so you're forced to interact with people with different opinions than you. And I think in college, you have to make an active choice to do that. And I definitely didn't make that choice for the first few years. And I think I'm now just realizing how important it is to do that.
Yes. Sorry. Am I frozen or? Okay. So I think the biggest difference between college and high school for me was definitely, this is probably cliche, but there's a lot less hand-holding in college. So if you don't want to go to class or you want to sleep in, then yeah, you can do that, but you might fall behind if you're not keeping up with all the content. So that's a big part of it. And also, the classes are taught in like a more traditional lectures. Most of the classes are taught in a more traditional like lecture style way. Whereas I think in high school, the teachers generally feel like, I don't know if progressive is the right word, but like more modern teaching styles. Like I know at Amador, the math classes are done in table groups and have like CPM and everything. And there's a lot more group projects in high school, I would say. Whereas in college, it's more just traditional lecture. And that works for some people, but I guess for others, it might be a little bit harder to actually really soak in the material just by listening to a lecture for 1 to 2 hours.
I think on that really quickly, that's a really big impact on that is where you go. So like if you know you need the hand holding and the group work, then you should just keep that in mind when you're applying to colleges and apply to a smaller college. Because Bryan, I think you go to Berkeley. So that's like a huge college and they just don't have, like there's so many students and so you do need to be independent. But I know some people that go to like really small liberal arts studies and that's great for them. And so I think that if you know that about yourself, you need to really keep that in mind when you're applying to colleges.
Yeah, that's definitely true. So definitely keep that into account when you're making your college list.
Also keep in account to like whatever major or degree you choose might have different levels of like how well you interact with like other students. So you might have more group projects in, let's say, a psychology class than maybe some of the biology classes. It just also depends on school too.
I guess for me, I have like two different things. So I think one is academics. In high school, I like was a good student. I was just kind of like, I didn't really care what, you know, like everyone was like, take APs, you know, like get this GPA. I was just kind of like, okay, like I hear you, but like, I'm gonna like do my own thing. And so, you know, like I took APs, I did my best, but I wasn't like, I really still believe in like a balanced lifestyle and really putting my health first and like exercise and like sleep. Like in high school, I probably didn't stay up like maybe one night, but like I went to bed super early every night. And like, and so then coming to college, I think, you know, for academics, like it was really challenging. Like my first quarter, I was really struggling in a lot of my science classes. And I was like, oh my God, like I can't do this. Like, why am I here? You know, like everyone's so much smarter than me. And so I think really like giving yourself the benefit of the doubt, especially when you're adapting to a new, like completely different life, you know, from high school to college, like that's super important. And just kind of like finding what works for you. Because it wasn't until like my end of my second quarter at Cal Poly that I really started to kind of figure out my study habits and like what works for me, and like, you know, working with groups and, you know, working with my lab partner, like that was a game changer in all like my science classes. And so I think academics were a big difference for me. But then also just like my life, in the sense that like, I feel like in college you have more freedom. And so I did a lot more things, like, especially at Cal Poly, like I didn't even realize, like, I didn't even think about this, but I was like, oh, I'm like close to the beach. Like, so like taking advantage of like the nature and like just living and like not putting so much pressure on like, you know, academics, and just trying to like find that balance in college. I feel like in high school, at least like I did it more so when I got to college than I did in high school.
Yeah, I mean, I think I definitely agree with like what everyone else said. Like I think college is like completely different than high school, and like you really can't explain it to someone without like having really gone through that process of like, I know exactly what they're talking about, but I'm sure like all of you guys listening are like, yeah, like it seems fine. Like, what's the big deal? But I think another thing that I think is really important about college is that like I feel like I have more authority, responsibility now. Like in high school, I kind of just went with things. I was like, yeah, that's how they are. Like that's just how things are gonna go. But I think in college, like I'm beginning to question things more and taking things to be like, hey, like, this doesn't have to be the way it is. Can we change it? And I think that's really cool about college because there's a lot of like bureaucratic built-in systems, but also as students we can change it, and a lot of like action does come from students, which I think is like the coolest thing ever. And Berkeley is like a really good campus for that if you're interested in like activism.
That was everyone, right? I'm pretty sure that's everyone. Okay. I think we can take a quick 5-minute break and we can hop back onto the questions. So you guys can turn your cameras off or whatever you want to do. Question, DM to me asking kind of a follow-up. It's what environmental initiatives does your college or university implement to maybe make it easier for students to practice sustainable habits?
I guess I can start, and Meg, we can kind of tag team this one because we're both at Cal Poly. But I guess I would have to say that like there's a lot of there's a lot of sustainability clubs, and I think it's really cool how there's a big network of different types of sustainability clubs that it kind of like it really makes you feel like you're a part of this large community. I will say like Cal Poly is not maybe the best as far as like sustainability and stuff, and Meg, you can talk about that probably, but yeah, I would say like as far as like the diversity of sustainability clubs in the community, it's really awesome. You know, there's like Surfrider, and then there's what other clubs, like Green Campus, there's Eco Reps, like there's just so many different like sustainability clubs, but all very different in what their kind of focus is. yeah, that's my part.
Cal Poly as a school honestly doesn't do too much. I think a year, maybe 2 years ago now, they hired a sustainability director, and she's been working really, really hard to try to make it better. Like I noticed this year, they actually do have like recycling and landfill, at least they've added recycling, which we didn't even do last year. But like Lauren was talking about, there's a bunch of clubs, and she's being very humble because she's the president of Surfrider, and she's doing a fantastic job.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm a part of Eco Reps, and we used to do a lot of outreach events, trying to like spread the word about sustainability, but our club was really small, and honestly, I don't know, there just doesn't seem to be like that much of an impact at Cal Poly. Yeah, it's not the best school, but we're working to get better.
So Emory is really close to the CDC. So we have like a lot of partnerships with the CDC, which also does a lot of environmental kind of related issues. So Emory has like a ton of different clubs that all focus on various different things. Like we have one of our clubs is called WASH, and it has to do with water just in general, with how we use water on our campus. We use recycled water for like all the plants and everything, which is pretty cool. They've had a sustainability director since like 2006. So it's actually pretty cool in that kind of a sense. And then like all of our buildings are pretty much eco-friendly. We do have recycling and compost and waste bins. It's such kind of sad that Cal Poly didn't have that for the longest period of time. But yeah, and overall, like all the students are at least required, from what I've seen, to take at least one environmental class, no matter what their major is, which I would say is pretty high up there considering most schools don't do that. And I think it's really helpful that they actually require students to do that.
Yeah, so at UCLA, there's a lot of the sustainability initiatives are on in the dorms and the dining halls. So our dining hall is actually zero waste. So in the dining halls, there's actually only a compost bin. So you don't have to actually sort what goes where. You just put everything in the compost bin because nothing's waste. And also in the dorms and throughout campus on the hill is what we call the dorms, but throughout the dorms, there's a 3-bin waste system everywhere. And you know, the fact is that most students don't follow this because I see contamination all the time. But I mean, at least there's an effort, and with some more education, I'm sure that at least we have the infrastructure now, the bins, and then now it's just a matter of education. And yeah, we also have this dining hall that's like designed to be more sustainable, and a lot of the food is like healthy, modern, LA style sustainable food, and it's designed to reduce carbon footprint. Like, for example, they offer impossible meat, which is like, I think it's supposed to be a little bit better for the environment than regular meat.
I've heard that your guys' dining hall situation is like grade A, very cool, very good. I've heard good things.
Yeah, UCLA is known for the dining halls. It's definitely not fair. I would say Berkeley has a lot, like so many things related to sustainability. I was definitely surprised by Cal Poly's like lack of compost bins. I work for Cal Zero Waste, if you can see my shirt, and our goal was 2020, but we're still getting there, so that's there. I think Berkeley has kind of like student-run efforts and then administrative-run efforts. So we have Cal Zero Waste on the facility side. We also have an office of sustainability that I work for, who does a lot more of like the energy side of it. And then for a lot of the student clubs, we have like a student newspaper, an environmental newspaper. We have student clubs focused on everything from like zero waste to environmental justice. I'm in like the Students of Color Environmental Collective. We also have our own our own senator on the Senate that's related to the eco community. There's just a lot that goes on in Berkeley. I think it's just hard to find what kind of things you're interested in. But if you have any questions, let me know. I'm very involved. It's absolutely amazing that people are the best. I think that's kind of like centered around like basically any university. Like the eco community is always like filled with the best and smartest and like the coolest people ever.
Oh, Colin, did you want to say something?
Oh yeah, because I got another, sorry, I got a DM about like a question that like follows up that. That's what it says there. It's
Oh
just
wait,
going off the
hold
last.
on. So
Yeah.
I was just gonna say that like I think it's really cool how our 5 panelists came up with like activism, education, arts, even like with the newspaper classes. Like I haven't really heard of that, making like strongly recommending a class in an environment to be taught. And that's so cool that Emory's doing that. And I know there's like the dining halls, like UCLA. Like I remember going to UCLA on a tour and they just talked about their dining halls the entire time and we were all okay with it. And so like things like that, like it's really cool how every school has what's going for them. And then for schools that maybe don't have it going for them, like you see obviously with like Meg and Lauren, like if they don't have it, then make it. And so I think that's a really good attitude that local leaders, alumni just have.
Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, it was funny when I asked the question. Like I could see Lauren and Meg physically like grimace or like shuffle, and I was like, oh no, that was it. Okay, but yeah, and even though like Cassie said, even though Cal Poly might not be the best, they're in clubs that are like on their way getting there, which is like what we do. Okay, so the DM I got was going off the last question. Since there are so many clubs that focus on different aspects, I'm assuming they mean of like the environment. What helps you guys pick which specific club or area you want to focus on?
I actually picked my club because of its size. It was really small and I was really hoping to get honestly kind of a friend group from it. And so there was only about 10 people in it and it's like pretty close knit. I know Lauren's a part of Surfrider and that club's also absolutely amazing, but it's huge and you have to be so involved in order to get anything from it. And my classes are kind of a bit much, and so I don't have that much time for clubs. And so that's kind of what I was looking for. And I also really liked the outreach aspect of it. It perhaps does a lot of things with non-environmental students.
I guess for me, I haven't really chosen one specific club because this is my first semester at Emory and everything is online. So it's a very different kind of world to enter into university with. And so I'm more or less just taking it day by day with what clubs are having a meeting. So if I can make it to it, then I go to it. Even if it's something I'm not 100% interested in, I still go and check out the meetings. But I've kind of narrowed it down more to like what my interests are. But there's just so much variety that it's just crazy to see like how many different people are interested in so many different aspects of environmentalism.
I think the best way to do this is to just try different clubs. Like I joined the Renewable Energy Association on campus, but I went to like a few meetings and didn't really like it that much, so I kind of didn't stick with it. But I'm really interested in like home sustainability, so we actually have a club called Bruin Home Solutions, and there we do a lot of stuff with like how to make your home more sustainable. For example, like they're doing projects like converting like old vehicles into electric vehicles, or making software to analyze the energy grid data and help you do energy audits. So I guess my main message here is to just try different clubs and see what really interests you. And yeah, like different factors include what type of environmental focus the club has, the size of the club, what you do. I think like a lot of the clubs, I don't know if this is for every campus, but a lot of clubs out there, they either require an application, which is annoying, or they don't really do anything. So yeah, just kind of look around and cast a wide net, and then hopefully you find something that interests you.
Yeah, definitely going off of that, like I kind of just like, I guess like my first year, like we had this like whole orientation week, and the last day of that week we had to go to a club showcase, and I kind of just signed up for like almost every club and just put my email, and like the only one that I like, or I guess there was 2 clubs, but like the only event that I like went to is like October, like classes start like September, and so I went October to a beach cleanup, and that was Surfrider. And after that, me and my roommate were like, oh my gosh, like we love this club, like this is our people. And so we just like started like getting involved. But you know, like I had a lot of other clubs that I signed up for, but I was like, I don't really have time for that, or like I don't know if I am as interested in that. So yeah, definitely like it's super important to just like put yourself out there and kind of like see what works for you and like what you like and stuff, because yeah. And then another club that I also like got involved with was Adventure Club, which is sustainability in a sense, but it's mostly just like at Cal Poly, it's like hiking and backpacking and like different trips and stuff. And so I went to Joshua Tree in November of last year for a trip, but we learned about like leave no trace, and like it was like, you know, that was important, and like obviously I'd heard about that, but like it was really cool to like learn about that. So yeah, definitely I agree with Bryan, like put yourself out there, and because there's so many different clubs and organizations on like every campus that like you could probably find one that really speaks to you.
Yeah, I mean, I think I kind of the same thing. Like I like signed up for a whole bunch to like see how it went, or saw how it went. I think it's like also for me, like in addition to other things, the people really make a difference. Like the club can do like, amazing stuff, but if the people there are like not that nice to you, or like they just don't like have an inclusive environment, then like there's like almost no point really sticking with it. So really making sure that like you find your people. I think like clubs in high school are very different than clubs in college. Like in clubs in high school, I think it's like a thing you just do like as part of school. But I think in like college, like clubs, or at least for me, like is how I found my friend group. Like that's kind of like the way you do. They also can give you like professional advice and like, here, I found an internship, and like pass it down to you. And I think like clubs are like kind of essential, at least for me in my college experience, which may not be the case for a lot of high schoolers. So just like really finding the people and like a club mission that really aligns with you.
I will also say go outside your comfort zone. Even if like the title of the club does not seem really appealing, don't always think that it's going to be a no for you, because in like unless you absolutely know that you absolutely hate ceramics or something. But like you can have a club name and that name might not truly represent that club if it has like a topic that you're interested in. So go and try it out. Don't be me when I was in my freshman year and signed up just for a couple clubs because I was too scared to try out some clubs I had no idea what they were about.
Yeah. Anisha, that last point really resonated with me. Even if you don't know what it's about, like just go try it. Because I know like local leaders of the 21st century, I had like no idea what it was. I was like, oh, is this like a leadership class? Like, you know, is it like a funnel into like the actual leadership class? I was like, wait, why do you need a precursor to the class? I was like so confused. And then so I just followed Colin there, and then Derry followed me there, and like Colleen followed Derry there, and then we all just like ended up here, and we're still here, and it's like it's one of the best decisions we made, I think. Okay. I mean, hopefully a lot of our underclassmen feel the same, or will feel the same. Okay, so the next question. What are some challenges that students in your major or field face? And you can also talk about challenges that you just faced in college, and it doesn't have to be sustainability related.
I can start. I guess for me, like this is kind of a challenge that I faced, especially my first quarter is for the nutrition major, you have 2 concentrations that you go into, 2 very different like careers and like paths after college. And I remember when I was in my like orientation to nutrition class, fall quarter, it was like week 3, and the professor was already saying that I did declare my concentration, and like that, like, you know, to keep up with your science classes and like make sure you're having this GPA. And I was just like, oh my God, like I just got here. Like, why do I have to start? Like, obviously, like I want to start thinking about my future, obviously, but I was like, why do I have to decide right now? And so for me, like, it was challenging to like figure out what exactly I wanted to like do. Like, I know I like all throughout high school, I was like, I know what I want to do. Like, I know what I want to study. But it's more like a loose idea, you know. It's for me at least. It's still not like set in stone. Like I have ideas about what I want to do, but it's like, oh my gosh, like why am I being like boxed into like a certain career path or like choice? And so I just kind of picked one, and then realized that I was like, wait, I don't want to be a registered dietitian. I don't want to do that. I was like, that's not what I want to do. And so I ended up like switching my concentration to like the medical, like usually a lot of people go into like med school. I still don't really know if I want to do that, but at least I have a little bit more freedom and flexibility, because I think a lot of people now, like in my major, like a lot of my peers are kind of experiencing this, where they're like, there's nutrition is so broad that you can go into so many different aspects, of it, but there's only 2 options. And so just kind of like realizing that, and just, just realizing that I don't have to do what, they're telling me to do, and just, I can figure out my own path. And it's just like a title, like it's just a concentration title. It doesn't like mean that it's gonna like control my future. That's, I guess, a main challenge for me.
I think my challenge is very similar to Lauren's, except for it has to do with this semester, and I only came up with my decision like 3 days ago. So Masters of Public Health, I'm in health policy and management, but you have to actually choose which track. And so I had to choose, and I was having the longest struggle trying to figure this out. I was talking to like other second year students, as well as my peers, as well as talking to professors, talking to advisors, you name it. I pretty much like talked to more than like 20 or 30 people for like hour conversations, which, as you can know, that probably takes up a lot of time when you're also working with school-wise. But in the end, I ended up choosing health policy, even though health management is going to be such like, it's going to be more towards maybe where I'm possibly going to go. I wanted the health policy aspect of it because the health policy aspect is you're creating it to change the world. The health management is more you overseeing it, or that's what I pretty much came up with based off of the different people I talked to. And so, yeah, it's a concentration. Most people don't even realize that there's 2 different paths for it. But choosing a certificate allows me to do some more environmental as well as some more management kind of roles as well.
And I guess for me, the biggest challenge would be just adjusting to the quarter system. I think most colleges are semester, but for me, the quarter system is really fast paced because there's like a test or some form of an assessment every few weeks or so. But I will say in terms of content, it's not that bad because a lot of the times what ends up happening is that 2 classes at a quarter school equals 1 semester at a semester school. So in terms of content, it's not that bad, but it's just kind of stressful to have a lot of tests so often. And yeah, just along the lines of what the others have said, just making your own decisions and living independently is just something that you have to get used to. And I guess making friends in college is also pretty hard too. Before I got into college, I heard that you make most of your friends like your first few weeks. And to be honest, I don't want to say that you're not going to make friends after the school starts, but I think it's definitely easiest to make friends when school starts. So there's a little bit of pressure to kind of get outside of your bubble during that time and join a lot of clubs and meet new people. So yeah.
Yeah, I think the freedom of college goes both ways of like, it's so exciting to have all this freedom, but like you have all this, like, what do you do with that responsibility? Like picking your own major and like doing all of that. I think it's really hard, especially like, at least for making a lot of environmental fields, because it's really hard. The field is so broad that it's hard to find exactly what you want to do. Like find people who've already done this work and ask them for questions. Like it's a lot of like LinkedIn stalking and like, hey, like you do like research on this aspect. I'm interested in that. Like, you know, talk to me about it. I think it's just hard to find someone who's like interested in the same path, just because like the environmental field is so big. But I think there's definitely a lot can be done with like research and like just really putting yourself out there.
I'm kind of going along with what Bryan said. I'm also on the quarter system and it's just really fast. Like it's only 10 weeks long. And so if you get sick for a week, like you just missed a big chunk of your life. I feel like I don't even feel like I'm the same person really that I was even just maybe a quarter ago, let alone when I was 18 and I started college. Like it's just this fast track of life and I am so different every single day, and every day I have to make decisions that seem super important. But sometimes I have to remind myself that like in 5 years, this decision will not matter. And that's something that I have to tell myself a lot because it's easy to get really stressed and really caught up in the moment. But sometimes it's important just to take a step back and calm down.
Okay, we got 10 minutes left and we have one more, I guess, what I call it core questions. It's kind of like the big culminating one. So I'll just get onto it. So why is it important to you to practice or preach environmental consciousness now and throughout your lives?
I feel like it's important because it's something that's going to be affecting us all the time, because we live in a world where the environment can affect your health, can affect other species around you. Just everything in general is connected to the environment. So if we don't care about the environment now, it's going to hurt us in the long run. Like, it's not going to help us by hurting the environment. It's just going to make things worse. So for me, it's just more of the fact that, like, we need to be aware of what we're doing to our world and what we can do to help prevent and possibly fix some things that are currently going on. We're really that generation that has to be the one that has to deal with this climate change that's going on. And we have to advocate for what we believe in, because a lot of times the younger generations are not looked up as much. Like, the older generations will kind of ignore the younger generations. But if we speak up about it and we make it very clear that this needs to change, things can change.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. With climate change, we're actually in the 6th largest extinction period of Earth's history. And so what I take away from that is that the Earth will bounce back. Like, the dinosaurs went extinct, and then mammals were able to adapt and radiate across the world, and it was super cool. So when we're worried about climate change, like, we should really be worried about us, like human beings as a species. Like, the Earth will be okay. We, however, may not be. And I think it's also just a matter of empathy, because climate change is very likely to unfairly affect poorer types or poorer groups of people. And so, quite honestly, as a middle-class citizen, it may not affect me in the same way that it would affect someone in another country. And so I think that I care about the environment because I just have empathy for those other people, and of course the animals that are also going extinct.
I completely agree, Meg. I think for me, it really wasn't until maybe like February of this year. I was like on the bus, like home, like going back home for the weekend, and I was like reading this magazine. It was like an Earth, like I forget the magazine exactly, but it was like some environmental like magazine. And I was reading it, and it said that it was like the Earth will be okay, but we won't. And so I think for me, like, that was completely a game changer, because, you know, like, I also wanted to study like environmental science. And I think kind of like changing like my narrative and just like the idea of like sustainability from, yeah, like the planet to the people was like completely why like I still continue to practice and like believe in sustainability and like how important it is. I think also, especially like reaching out for people who need help and like really trying to give more access to people and advocate for what other people like may not be able to is super important. And also just like for me, like it brings me so much joy when I see someone, like, if I like tell them about like a book or I tell them about a recipe and they like do it and they're like, oh my gosh, it was so good. Like, that brings me so much joy to see like other people like doing things that like I might have inspired them to do. And so like things like that like continue like to make me like live the life that I do. And I hope that other people like is like continuing to spread it, or like, you know, have a ripple effect, if that makes sense. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, everybody in the modern world is so caught up with, you know, their everyday lives. They have a lot of different things going on with, you know, their family, their social things. So I think it's important to just keep this environmental message alive, because we kind of want to create a culture where people are still thinking about the environment. We don't want them to completely forget about it. So that's why I think it's important to at least remind people about the importance of sustainability. And like, I remember when I was really young, probably like 5, I was at Stonehenge Mall parking lot, and I saw like this random person in the driver's seat of their car just dump out their garbage. It was like an entire takeout box or something. And I think as a kid, I was thinking, why can't they just get to a trash can first and throw it away? So I think the takeaway of this is that kids and people who are growing up and still being educated, naturally, they have the tendency to want to, care about the environment, I think. So we should probably try to not take advantage, but use this to help educate them about environmental protection and sustainability and really drive the message home. Because again, I think most people want to do the right thing with the environment. The main reason why people are against it is because they think that it might be like bad for the economy, or I don't know, maybe it's just a hassle. So we really want to find ways to find compromises between these things and try to create a situation where everyone's happy, both like the people who are worried about their own everyday lives with the environment, and also like the economy and that kind of stuff.
I definitely resonate with like Lauren and Meg said about like the people. I think the people aspect of like sustainability, like focusing a lot on like empowering and uplifting these marginalized communities in terms of like they're the ones who are most affected by environmental harms, and they are continue to be affected by these because of the oppressive systems that we live in. And focusing on sustainability from a very multidisciplinary lens of it's not just sustainability, it's social systems, it's political systems, economic systems, and making sure that these are all these barriers are taken down collectively. I think it's really important to make sure that it's sustainability, but it's sustainability that is going to last for a long time, that's sustainable. And I think it is like really the empathy aspect of it. Like Meg said, I personally benefit off of some of these oppressive systems, and I think making sure that that's not fair, like it's not just, and making sure that at least other people have the same access to opportunities that I do and the resources that I do, because I think that's really what's at the core of it for me.
Okay, someone DM'd me the question. All right, what advice do you have for someone looking into going into an environmental major, or just college advice in general?
I think this will be our last question.
Yeah, we're coming to the close.
I would say one piece of advice is do your research on the schools that you're interested in, but also what you're interested in, and make sure that school that you go to aligns with what you're interested in, because there's a lot of schools that might say they're environmental major, but they might not have to do a lot with what you're interested in. So you want to go to the school that's going to give you the best possible opportunity to learn all you want to learn, but also allow you to explore and learn further about what you want to learn. So in the sense that you're not just stuck into one spot and that's all you're going to be at. You want to like really explore and see what other kind of things there are out there, because it might look all simple and easy at first, but there's like a lot more that happens that you'll learn, and that's only going to happen through experience.
Yeah, going off of that, I think a lot of people get super caught up in names when they're applying to college, and they think that like, oh, I have to go to Harvard or Yale, but are you going to be happy there? Are you going to learn there? I think that it's really important, like Anisha said, you have to find a school that has your major well. Like I know ASU isn't super respected. It's kind of known as a party school, but my friend is a nursing major and they have an amazing nursing program. And so it doesn't matter that the school's name isn't great, because she's getting such a good education. And I think that's kind of hard because reputation does matter to a point. But when you're applying to college, I think you need to think more about what are you going to do on the weekends? Like, do you like to go hiking? Is that school in the middle of a city? Can you go hiking there? And things like that. And I think those are a lot more important.
And also, like, are you going to be going further than just an undergrad diploma? Because for me, I went to Washington State University. It's not as well known, but I go to Emory for my graduate because I know what I want to do with my life. And so it doesn't matter really, truthfully, where you go to, as long as you get the education that you are looking for.
I completely agree. Just kind of going off of that, like I think it's super easy at Amador and the Bay Area to get very caught up. And especially, your senior year when everyone's, talking about colleges, it's kind of like this, like, oh my gosh, like, where are you going? Where are you going? And it's like, really, you should be asking, like, are you excited? What are you looking forward to about college? And it's like, forget, like, I don't know, my mentality is like, yeah, like Meg said, like, the name is important, but like your happiness and like what you're going to get out of college is so much more important, because college is what you make of it. So it doesn't really matter where you go, it's what you put into it that really matters.
I think, yeah, those are like really, really important. And like, just the first thing is, like, it's okay to not know. Like, if you don't know what you want to do, that is totally fine. That's totally like accepted. That's what college is for. Really, to come here and explore. And like, you can even know what you want to do, come to college and change that. So really being like accepted, being like open to change, being like, be open to that change. Like, don't be like, I have to do this major, I have to take only these classes. College is really about exploration, so do what, like, everything you want to do, and even if you don't like it, that's fine. You learn that you don't like it, and then you won't do it again. Yeah.
And I would also like to say, like, if you don't know what you want to do, going to community college is not the end of the world. I have lots of friends who went to community college because they didn't know exactly what they wanted to do, but like some of them are now getting PhDs. So like they kind of just figure out where they go, and you can learn so much from it. And so even though a lot of people say community colleges aren't the greatest experience, they definitely can change your life and make it a lot better. So then you're not wasting tons of money into really expensive courses that you might not be interested in. Instead, you can take your basic requirements and then transfer later on when you figure out what you want to do.
Yeah, just kind of, I agree with everything said, but also just, I guess to summarize, just have a growth mindset, because the best way to learn new things is just have a growth mindset, and just go into college being ready to be exposed to new ideas, new ways to do things. And I think that's one of the best ways to learn. That's what really gets it into your brain the best, is when you actually make the mistake, or when you're actually doing college itself. So don't like overthink. Obviously you should put in the proper preparation, but you don't have to overthink like, oh, am I doing this right? Am I doing this right? Just just kind of relax about it, and usually there's always second chances and stuff.
Okay, thank you guys so much for all of that, like, really good advice. This last question, we didn't even prepare it, but like it hits very close to home with me, and I'm sure a lot of other people in this room right now. And also thank you for answering all the other questions that resonate with everyone here. I know that I've been inspired, and if I've been inspired, I know that a lot of the members here who maybe this is their first year in local leaders probably had a really good time. Hope you guys did. Before we shut it all down and like log off wherever, I know Celine wanted to get a quick photo. Kind of sucks that Varsha had to go, but maybe we can Photoshop her in. Oh. It's like a smile, right?
Okay, taking the picture. Okay, got it. Thank you. Oh, we have some. Okay, never mind.
Oh yeah, I would like to say, like, in case anybody like has questions or anything, you're more than free to contact me. Colin and Cassie can give you my email. I'm more than willing to like answer questions, and if you have questions about college life, etc., I can answer those too. Because I know what it's like being in that spot where you don't know what you want to do with life in general.
Yeah, add these people on LinkedIn. Connect with them early.
All right. Thank you guys so much. If you have any closing thoughts, so go ahead. But
I agree with Anisha. If you guys are interested in anything, especially biology, I'm a huge nerd and I love to talk about it. So you can reach out to me about that. Not about English though, really.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you. And yeah, like everyone else said, feel free to reach out to me. I can answer any questions, or if you need some vegan meal recipes, I got you.
all right, cool. Thank you guys so much.
Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Have a good
Free to go
weekend,
now.
everyone.
Bye, everyone.
and
Yeah.
dairy, yeah, sure. I think, right? Yeah.
Very
Thanks,
sure.
Colin.
Woohoo, that was good.
That went so well, you guys.
I know.
Good job.
I'll send you guys the photo. One sec.
Yeah,
Put it
Colin,
in the.
that was so great. That was really fun and it was really productive. Really nice.
Yeah, that went better than I expected, to be honest. Like I